Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Denise... Oh my god, what do you guys do to me?
This is going to be a debacle. A debacle.
I'm going to leave that in. Denise Straiges and Alastair Gray, welcome back for part 2 of this special with yourselves on the Homeopathy Health Show. And I think the energy is such that we're just going to carry on as we were, I think, making no sense whatsoever to anybody, but just having a really good time swimming in the ocean of homeopathy.
Love it.
Perfect.
That was very nicely said, wasn't it? I'll have to write that down.
Yes, it really was. I'm glad you recorded it.
And I'm dressed appropriately because while I am, good for dancing upstairs, I'm wearing my board shorts. Do
you want to show those? I can use that in the trailer.
Business on the top, party on the bottom.
Is it the business at the top? Party yeah. It's not, but it's high summer. It's filthy humid today. Oh my goodness. I've been outside. I'm working on the house and learning how to fix rotten wood and painting preparation and all that stuff up and down ladders. So jumping in the pool is...
Hey, I learned a lot of new things this last month about how to detail a car and how to fix things. So I learned so much, and my car is, God willing, it's sparkling at the moment.
Fantastic.
Right. When we were last with you,
you were
awaiting the arrival of a new vehicle.
We were going to be postponed because, the car was going to arrive or something.
Yeah, it was repaired, but it was repaired in such a way that it wasn't repaired, let's say. It came back with more problems. And then I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm the doctor here. Let me sort it out, And I managed to do that. I fixed nearly everything, including blocked up washer jets. The interior was filthy, had it detailed, cleaned it up, polished it, blah, blah, blah. And now it looks drivable. It looks good.
I want to run with this because I in my sanding moments and up and down ladders, you often think about, what am I doing? Shouldn't I just be paying for someone to be doing this? And the clear message that I'm getting is that dealing with a house, or in fact a car, from the moment you have it, it's in decline. And I've never really thought about that about a property or a house or a
body.
Well, I've definitely thought about it as a body because
entropy.
Because we shrink and gravity takes over and all the rest of it, and things happen and but the point is that it's a direct metaphor, and the way in which you go about attending to your car, or am I going to start with the windowsills, or am I going to start with that problem up there? And then, the way in which you go about it, because the awning over the window between this one and that one is the state of it is caused by a different problem. There's insects or there's water, and depending on our susceptibilities and also our genetics and predilections and all the rest of it, I think there's a direct...
Listen to you.
Listen to me.
It's interesting, though. It really is, because I always had a thing about plumbing. I couldn't touch it. I thought I just couldn't do it. Right. And I was saying this, at home, and I was sharing this, and I thought, how amazing that, I don't know if it's an age thing but I was able to change and people may laugh, but I was able to change a tap on my own. I knew what to do. I knew which parts to use, and it hasn't leaked. And it was great. And that feeling, and I repaired the leak behind the fridge for the ice cubes that are made, in these big freezers now, in the fridges rather. That was broken. It was leaking water, and I repaired that. And it didn't take too long at all. And a couple of videos on YouTube, of course, do help.
Yep.
And I felt so proud of myself. I said, "Do you know what? Anything's possible."
I think I'm with you in a deep masculine way. And there's also something about
in a deep masculine way.
I'm enjoying this
because there's something about feeling as incompetent that I don't know how to do something that someone else seems to know how to do.
Yeah.
And the confidence in going, no, I recognize that. Actually, I can do that. If I do that really carefully, I'll need this tool. I'll go and buy that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly your fridge is not leaking and the world is a better place.
In fact, totally not related to homeopathy.
It is related to homeopathy.
But a gentleman who was a mechanic for the car, he said the washer jets weren't working. So, when you pull the indicator lever and the jets spray water on the windscreen, they weren't working. And he said to me, we'll have to remove the wheel and the arch, take the tank out because the cable has been pulled from there, the tube. And I thought, I don't think it's that, because I'd seen a few videos and, you watch enough different videos and you come to a conclusion that it's probably going to be this and not that. And I thought, it's not that. It's just some gunk which has come up into the filter. So I bought some compressed air from Amazon and I opened it up and I put the compressed air in and it cleaned out the gunk and the jets were working. And that saved me, what, $200-300 probably if I'd gone to somebody else. So it's interesting, isn't it, that sometimes we panic.
Well, we also need a disclaimer, however. We're not going to do home dentistry. We're not going to be doing spleen surgery.
You read my mind. You read my mind.
So let's put some guardrails around this because I think we've established the metaphor, but we're dealing with chronic disease. And that's not for home YouTube, a couple of YouTubes.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But I must say, Denise has taken a rather bad fall this morning.
And how did you fall?
So it's one of those things.
You were there.
I was. I heard the language. Oh my Lord!
I did a little cussing. I stepped on a plate of, well, it was empty, but a plate of cat food. So
as you do.
As one does, right?
Oops.
So I stepped. The plate was on the floor, and I stepped on it, and I slid, and I went right into the wall, and I hit my elbow right here, which you can't really tell because I have other injuries that are there from falling. But and it was an interesting homeopathy moment because Al went running into the remedy cupboards and came back with arnica, and I'm like, I don't need arnica, which of course is what one says when they need arnica, but I don't think they did. I'm not sure, and actually I haven't taken anything because I'm not sure what happened. But that, do you call it a funny bone or a crazy bone?
Yeah, funny.
I think I hit the nerve, the ulnar nerve, because it went all the way down to my fingers and it's going all the way up to my shoulder. And I'm left-handed, so I'm having to drink my coffee with my non-dominant hand, which is a little disturbing. Anyway,
hey, I'm left-handed.
If a British sailor in the 18th century had a love child with a truck driver, then that's the language that emerged.
Oh my God!
In that event,
Al said, "I've never heard you like that before," and then he reflected and he said, "Actually, I have."
That time, yeah.
You know, for those who've listened to part one, we know that Alastair mentioned about dressing up as Hahnemann, but if you see that image, for a moment you think it's Amadeus Mozart. So you never know. Hey.
Yeah. It's true.
Whatever it is, it's classic. Gold. Classic gold. But hey, congratulations in order to both of you. There has been a wedding, I believe. Has there been a wedding?
Ours?
In the family?
Oh, yeah. There were two. Oh, I was like,
2016.
We've been married for a while.
You'd think they'd remember, right? But because it only happened a couple of weeks ago. But this is life. I'm so sorry about this.
We have been to two weddings.
That's right. We've
been to two weddings. There was a lot of dancing. There was a lot of merriment.
Can I mention Italian New Jersey weddings? Wow.
Italian people are a lot of,
a lot of Francis.
Tell us who got married. Who got married?
The first one was my goddaughter, my cousin's daughter, Jessica, and that was a lot of fun because she is really close friends with my kids. Well, those kids and my kids, and so that was lovely. And then the next one was my cousin's daughter, and yeah, we had a great time at both of them.
You know, you shared some pictures, so hey, testament that I do follow you and I do pay attention.
Social
Got
media,
it.
yeah.
But there
Right.
was one picture of Alistair specifically with some buddies, and it was such a nice picture, honestly. And I'm not putting you on the spot, but you know, when I saw that, it made me really happy because it was, you could feel the happiness and the joy. Sometimes you catch just the right photo at the right time, which actually has a depth to it, you know? It's not just stand and let's smile. There was truth in that, and you had that moment captured. So yeah, you know, well done. It was beautiful. It really was. It has a lot of
Yeah.
emotion to it.
Well, that's really lovely. I have felt incredibly welcomed by your family.
They love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do talk funny, according to them. But yeah, we have a good time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now tell me, on to homeopathy, or
Yeah.
should I say, let's talk specifically about homeopathy. But what does, I wanted to ask you actually just before I was going to ask you what I was going to, but with the landscape and the current climate, and I know we touched upon this last time as well, but even now there seems to be such a huge surge towards taking or empowering oneself with natural healthcare. I'm talking to so many people, and everybody's saying the same thing. A few years back, if you talked about a smoothie, for example, or nutrition, people would say, "What's that?" You know, or they'd say, "No, I don't really know about smoothies." Now people are saying, "Oh, by the way, this is my diet," without me having to ask. I'm taking smoothies, I'm putting celery in there, cucumber, whatever it is, banana, blah, blah, blah. Moringa powder is an example, I mean, of what people have said. I'm having herbal tea or green tea. I'm going for walks. You know, I'm making sure I've got my steps in. It's really changing, isn't it? The dynamics of healthcare, because people are really focusing on their well-being. They're actually taking it very, very seriously now. Whereas before, it's always been you do it if you can, when you can.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's so interesting because on one hand, so we did this, we gave a talk at a conference and then we followed it up with a 7-week or 8-week thing for Whole Health Now. Remember that on autoimmune disease back in, I don't know, 2017 or something.
No.
And we did this deep dive into Hahnemann and regimen and all the times that he mentions diet, regimen, you know, all of that, talking about indispositions, right? So what we do to ourselves that causes us pain as opposed to a dynamic disease. And what are all the ways in which we can and should take responsibility for our health? In other words, if you are suffering, then you need to focus on what you're doing. And so I think in a way, that is a really nice sort of return to the sort of global holistic understanding that Hahnemann had about health. So I think that's really the good news.
I think we're in interesting times. On the one hand, do you know the percent of the organon that is devoted to diet and lifestyle and the removal of obstacles to cure? It's 15%. 15% of the organon is devoted not to remedies, pills, what is health, all of that stuff, but it is about attending to the skin bag, you know, and an opinion, and a pretty strong opinion about regimen.
Yeah.
You know, while it's not in the organon, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I was so pleased when I found it, but in Berninghausen's lesser writings, there is the homeopathic diet. And it is it's a couple of hundred years old now. And you can eat cod, but you can't eat salmon. You know, it's really opinionated based on a whole lot of 19th century values. And I think it's just interesting that the advice is bland. When you are in the treatment of your chronic disease, bland is the order of the day.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can't eat a gherkin every now and again or have a glass of wine. But if you want to come and see me for your treatment, then I want you to be attending to the what's another word for bland? Beige. The beigest lifestyle imaginable. Anyway, so we've got that. And I think many, in the 100 years prior to now, I think homeopaths have forgotten all about that. And
Well,
so we've
but
got this,
because they focus on,
well, the emphasis on the pill.
well, yeah, the emphasis on the pill, but also on the things on coffee and toothpaste. Is
Yeah.
it like that in the UK? Because in America,
Yeah.
like you go to the homeopath and they say no mint toothpaste and no coffee.
It is. A lot of people call me up. I've always found it's interesting, this conversation, because I've always found when you give those types of rules, generally patients will always ask me one question: should I take it before meals or after? But when you put in certain rules, it does honestly complicate matters. I found, I'm just saying as an example, some patients have called me up and they've said, oh, we're doing really well and such is better. And I said, okay, have you taken the remedies properly? Just out of curiosity, how did you take them? Oh, we dropped the pellet in coffee. I said, I beg your pardon? They said, oh, we put it in coffee. I said, I never said that. But they said, yeah, but look, hey, my migraine is gone, or the sciatic pain that I had has gone. And interesting conversation, right?
Yeah.
Well, the coffee part. The people that are extremely opinionated about all of those rules have essentially misread 261, right?
Yeah, footnote to 260.
260, of course.
The footnote.
Where it says, no asparagus with green tips, and you can't do this and can't do that, and you can't wear woolen clothing, and you can't swing.
Yeah. No passive movement.
And no, there's a few.
Abstinence. Incomplete coition. Oh, wait, this is a family program,
Is
right?
this family program?
Family program? All right, so we'll leave out the next part.
All right. But the point is that but Vermeulen was the guy that really highlighted that Hahnemann's attitude towards coffee was that it was un-Germanic, not that it was evil. And of course, at the time, the Dutch had the rights to import coffee from the East Indies, and therefore it was more Germanic to drink beer for breakfast in the morning, or for any other reason. So it's not to say that coffee can't mess with some people. I've seen one case once that was definitely antidoted with coffee. There's no doubt about that. That's my personal experience. No more than that, however. So that's 36 years. One client once. But, like you said.
You really have only seen one client that has had.
Whose remedy has been antidoted.
Antidoted. Okay,
Yep.
Got it.
But, our Brazilian friends and our Indonesian friends and everyone else.
Our Italian friends.
Italian friends, are you kidding? So coffee, you're totally right. I mean, I'm not.
But Hahnemann does, in the footnote to 260, he does start it with patients with chronic diseases should avoid the following. Coffee is the first thing. Fine Chinese tea and other herb teas. So there goes your celestial seasonings, red zinger.
Red zinger.
At the end of the day, he's saying don't do anything that is medicinal that's going to impact your.
Yeah, let that message come through.
Yeah.
My question to you then is, that was 220 years ago. And dare I say it, disease may have been less overwhelming to treat than it is now in modern technological times, where we are absolutely bombarded with chemicals and pesticides and gamma rays and God knows what else, and everything is nothing seems to be pure, right? Even I read some reports that organic food is more toxic because of the conditions they have to be grown in to make them organic. And that was a real sort of eye opener. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? How does that work?
Yeah.
So based on 220 years, has that not changed, that now perhaps coffee, I don't know, not just coffee, but maybe the diet does need, of course it needs to be healthy. We know that, absolutely, 100%. But we can sort of step back a bit and say, well, let's be a bit flexible.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think it is impossible to compare. I really do. I love the question, but I don't know that we could make any real good progress with that. But what we can say are our clients that appear with lycopodium symptoms, boom, 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 you give them lycopodium LM1 and they don't respond. Now, that's the challenge for us, and what is possibly in the way. And so often what Denise and I, can I draw or take an arc back to the other side of that discussion we were having before. And very often the clients come to us whose needs lycopodium or whatever it might be, and they've taken 223 remedies in the last year.
Yeah.
Now that's what we are
In
finding.
the last year, in the last 2 months.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've had clients bring spreadsheets of
Yep.
remedies that they've taken,
And sometimes 4, 5, 6 at a time.
sometimes from a homeopath, and most of the time not from the homeopath.
Oh, the protocol people are seeing quote unquote homeopaths.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I do this course. We do a free course if anybody's interested in. Al does on the history of healing to contextualize homeopathy, and then I do a thing on integrative wellness and homeopathy. So it's 4 sessions. I'm actually doing the 3rd one tomorrow, I think, but it's food, movement and body work, mindfulness, and then homeopathy in the context of integrative medicine. And the food one is really interesting because, well, I'm going to marry that to a case that I often teach, and when I teach on autoimmunity, and it's a case of a woman I saw who had an MS diagnosis, who was in bad shape. She was heading from relapsing and remitting symptoms to secondary progressive. She was really in bad shape, and she'd been doing well with the homeopathy, but she also had some real obstacles to cure. She drank a lot of Diet Coke. She ate a lot of processed things. She was definitely not removing the chemicals from her day-to-day life, right? And so her case was moving well. There was no question that she was improving, but there was a ceiling to how far she could go. And when she finally got on, she did an elimination diet. She actually wound up doing the Candida diet, which I think was a bit much for her, but boom, her symptom picture was exponentially better. And so there is this way in which, when we are, whatever the diet is, because some people do a paleo diet and feel better. Some people will be vegan if they've got a heart condition. Maybe that's the best choice for them. I mean, there are a lot of options, but at the end of the day, healthy living along with the homeopathic remedy is going to make the case better.
Absolutely.
Right?
In fact, Denise, it's such a good point, because I was going to ask Alastair, because you've got this background, haven't you, with traditional complementary integrative medicine and education. In the Indian subcontinent, or certainly from the East, we are taught, and we're equipped with knowing which foods have a hot constitution and which cold. So turmeric in milk, just purely as an example for this conversation, as in cold milk has a cold constitution, in hot milk it has a hot constitution. Beef notoriously has a hot constitution. So anyone suffering from liver complaints, beef is ideally to be removed or minimized from the diet until one is much healthier. What's your take on that and understanding? Because isn't that an important element when we're talking to our patients? Because they're not all, from the local area, right? There's people from all over the world, and different food types, different diets, staple diets, climate. So much needs to be understood and taken on board, doesn't it? When discussing a health plan, for want of a better word, with a patient.
Yeah, I think in a way homeopathy is a little bit unsophisticated in that arena. There's a part of the problem is the misuse of the term constitution in homeopathy, because quite often what people are saying when they talk about constitution is that they're talking about their chronic state, not their constitution. A constitution, there have been a few attempts in homeopathy to describe, I believe, exactly what you're talking about. If we look at Ayurveda, for example, then that the diagnosis and then the treatment plan is based on a very sophisticated analysis of the makeup of the client. That's in traditional Indian medicine. But meanwhile, for 4,000 years, they've been doing the same thing in China with 5-element theory and, looking at exactly the same thing using totally different language and a really sophisticated understanding of the way that energy moves through the body. Meantime, in pre-Columbian North Mesa and South America, traditional medicine has been honoring the Constitution and, and its engagement with elements and, and so therefore the physician or the shaman in all of those different places, their job was to identify the cause of the problem, knowing the constitutional type of the person, and then through trance, smoke, plants, whatever it might be, get into a state and identify why this person's out of balance in the context of the community. Now, I don't see our job as any different from that in a way. I don't know, there's a lot of smoke, or dance or trance that we use in conventional homeopathy. But going back to what I was going to say, von Grauvogl, an old homeopath from the 1800s, that book was refound talking about the constitutional types. Now, that's what constitutional types mean in homeopathy, the hydrogenoid constitution. That's constitutional homeopathy. And if you've got a hydrogenoid constitution, both of us have a little bit of hydrogenoid in us, that means that, actually, that's really interesting because that lends itself to the psychotic remedies predominantly. And the psychotic remedies, okay, well, what's in the center of that? Well, a bit of thea and a bit of metarinum and an awful lot of natrum sulfur, especially when you bash your head or your arm. And, suddenly that becomes very useful for the observing homeopath, for the client in front. So I totally agree. But do you understand what I'm saying? We're not very sophisticated in it, because when I say hydrogenoid constitution, no one really agrees on what that is.
Yeah.
And when you think about the remedies that a homeopath might think about, there's no agreement about that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a funky area close to some of the other whole healing systems. Yeah.
Is that book available? No, you said it's available in print? Or?
Yeah, the original, what do you call it? That were destroyed in the Chicago fire in the 1880s.
Yeah.
The plates, the original plates of the book.
Yeah.
And it was only someone finding, I think, one of the actual books and then typing it.
Wow.
To have the the rebirth of that perspective.
But there are some issues with it. When was he? He was 18.
I think it's 18. Yeah, something like that.
So some of the challenges, though, that we face, and this is something, being educators in homeopathy, one of the things that you really come up against when you have smart students is that they ask you questions that you need to find answers for. And one of the biggest challenges I think we face is that our materials are inconsistent. So if we just use the terminology around the Constitution, for example, like I love how you were using it related to sort of the Ayurvedic concept, or at least I'm going to call it the Ayurvedic concept around food, turmeric and cold milk versus warm milk and so forth. And that makes total sense there. And you can also look at a person and look at their constitution. You look at somebody who's got a tubercular constitution. Like if anyone who's a homeopath were to look at my dad, they would say, now he's a tubercular guy. My dad weighs 130 pounds and he's 6 feet tall.
Wringing wet.
He is a wire, right? And so that is just, that's just his way. So that's his constitution. But when he had a bout of high blood pressure, did he need a tubercular remedy? Right? So this idea that the constitutional terminology is in the same context as disease idea, right? Because as homeopaths, we don't treat the whole person. We treat the way in which all aspects of the person are struggling from an energetic imbalance. But if you mix up their quote personality, right, or their constitutional traits with their chronic disease, then you're in trouble. Yeah, it kind of doesn't work that way, and the materials don't lend themselves to that, right?
That is brilliant what you said. Absolutely. I tell you something. Just a few months ago, Dr. Ian Sholton was back as a returning guest, and we were talking about the Who Am I? Very deep conversation, and he said something very interesting about constitution. He said people always talk about this, very much in line with what you've just said. People always talk about constitutions. He said, but if someone, for example, is sulfur and you give him sulfur, then what's left? So, you mentioned personalities.
Yeah.
It's actually the personality layers, isn't it? The constitution is well behind that. That's your psyche. That's your psyche, isn't it? That's you as always going to be. Who am I?
Yeah, I was teaching a clinic the other day and trying to get this trying to help students to grapple with something. So I had, we do clinic intensives through the month of July. It's really intense. Anyway, so
sounds fun.
It is actually, it's really fun. And so I had a series of kid cases, kids with eczema and few other symptoms, or what I call the schmear, eczema, food allergies, and sometimes environmental or respiratory issues. And so talking about these kids, when you first see them, those little Buddha babies, that you give them calc carb, because what you're seeing is constitution, life force. You're not seeing the expression of their chronic disease. But if that kid comes into the world with really, they're sicker than they should be. They've had, RSV when they're 6 weeks old. They're getting a nebulizer treatment every 3 weeks, and they're covered in eczema by the time they are, 8 months old or a year old. Then you might be looking at a psychotic expression. You might be looking at this kid needs metarhinum before you can get anywhere near what that sort of constitutional state is.
Yeah.
And so this separation of the constitution and the disease, it's like, well, I think one of the things that's really hard about understanding homeopathy is that you've got to see it in the context of its development, right? The times in which these materials were introduced, right? So in the 19th century, sort of right after Hahnemann's death, you have the biomedical revolution, bioreductionism. Everybody is looking at the disease as being related to a causative agent. Yeah. And so right away, the language in homeopathy, where Hahnemann's talking about our energetic disease that permeates the entirety of the individual, right? That's what chronic diseases is about. It suddenly takes on a different meaning in 1880 and 1890 with people who didn't understand the depth of chronic diseases. So now you've got two people using the exact same language, meaning totally different things. And that's really hard to reconcile, right? So that's why going back to the original source material becomes a much more important conversation.
It's really, really important, because I see, if we're putting some of these dots together today, I see that quite often folks that have been dabbling in homeopathy and doing a bit of DIY, they're generally pretty accurate. Okay, so I've got this. If I've got access to a repertory, then and I've got these symptoms, then I'm going to work out. Okay, I'm going to try a little bit of this, or I'm going to try a little bit of that, and so they do. And ultimately, they might have a head, or they might, just their health status might improve a bit, but without going to school to understand the depth and the context and the guardrails. And that very simple thing that Denise just said means that those prescriptions are always going to be limited, because they don't understand the totality. They don't understand what that critical part of homeopathy is, totality of symptoms. So I am all about providing, the permission and agency for people to take responsibility for their health. But, to me, there's got to be some sort of container, or I'm going to say it, educational standards by which folks that are really wanting to do this get involved in a program that's going to be providing all of that contextual information that's so critical.
This married couple, they each came to our clinic, each with their chronic issues. And the wife she has a serious autoimmune condition. And she's been doing DIY. She took a couple of those, they spent thousands of dollars to take these DIY homeopathy courses. She had taken over 200 remedies. So I would have seen her in her case. I think we saw her for the first time in May. She would have had over 200 remedies from the first of the year until May. She was so much sicker. I said to the students, this is really terrible. I said, she'd have been better off drinking bleach than doing what she did. Yeah. Her husband, who also
that was just an example. Don't try that at home.
Yeah, don't drink any bleach. No, but that's an example of how bad it was.
That's a turn of phrase.
Her husband, when we gave him, it was a really clear case, indicated remedy, calcaria carbonicum, actually, very clearly indicated remedy. He would have such a reaction. Everything would he was like jangled, no matter how we provided a very, very minimum dose. And we said to him, let's just let it ride. And he didn't have anything for 3 months. And in that time, that remedy vacation, He then settled. He settled. And then after 3 months, he got a very diluted dose of the remedy. And now we got a clear response.
You could say that it was information overload, totally. If you take the remedy as information,
Absolutely.
it's like you've just made somebody swallow a whole book.
Yeah.
And the body can't handle it because it's too much information.
Yeah. What do you do with that? Yeah. That's actually a really good way to look at it.
It's one of the challenges we have. It's like, I don't think, when I studied in the UK back in the early 90s. I graduated in 1992. I can't remember. Sometime back then in the Bush senior administration. And so, but I don't recall any school time, any curriculum time devoted to complicated cases because of this kind of thing. Anyway, the point that I'm making is I think it's on our watch, and it's something which is a challenge for us. I think as schools, we're not in alignment on a message to students in many ways. I think that could be something that would be really, really useful. And the other part of it is there's zero research on this phenomena. And one of the things that we are just very mindful of, part of our work at Home Foundation, is to start to fill in the really critical gaps that are in our evidence hierarchy. Yeah. We are really good at talking about our cases and our calc carb cases and all the rest of it, but in the scientific world, that's meaningless. And so what we absolutely need is information, high-end, good, robust information about our practices and what we do and the challenges we face in our practice. And even if there isn't a solution, we can at least gather clear, good, data that says, we are a really valuable part of the healthcare pie and in community and public health. And this is what's going on for us at the moment. So, yeah.
You mentioned something really, really important, which is educational standards. Yep. As far as homeopathy, if I can use an analogy, I don't know if it's any good, but we can all cook, or we can certainly try to, right? But when you go to a restaurant or when you see somebody who's a professional cook or a chef, that they know the science behind food, when to use starch, when to use yeast, how much to use, how much time is required to boil, how many Fahrenheit's in the cooker, blah, 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 what proportions of mixtures are needed. That's the standard, isn't it? That's the standard, because they know more than you'll ever know, right? And no videos are going to change that, no matter how many you watch at home or any books. You have to learn, you have to go through that process. And homeopathy, again, from the start of Hahnemann to now, there's so much information, and it's not just, okay, take arnica for a bump, that's fine, but for chronic conditions, let's remove acutes from the equation as such, but for chronic conditions, it's so important to know that background, because that's when it comes to life. As homeopaths, our goal, and we've been talking about this throughout this episode, certainly, is not just homeopathy, it's everything else. It's lifestyle, isn't it? Do they need to meditate? Do they need a nutritional change? What are they doing in their life which is causing their cortisol to be out of whack all the time? That goes part and parcel. And sorry to go on, but I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
A lot of patients come and they say, oh, we've got joint pains, or, we just don't, we suffer from brain fog, or maybe inflammation, blah, blah, blah. And I always ask them, I said, what's your diet like? Well, we have soda pops, we eat junk food, we have pickles, we have, things which are all acidic. And I said, well, hang on a minute. If you change your diet and supplement everything else with water, you're going to be at least 50% better within 10 days. It's a normal process.
Yeah.
And then we can review and revisit you saying, what's left? Let's deal with that with homeopathy. Because there's no point, if you're saturated, to start homeopathy, because the body is like, what's going on here,
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly the approach that Hahnemann and all the great homeopaths have said. Remove the obstacles first, and then we can see a clear symptom picture. And then the remedy just speaks to us. And reveals itself. But you asked about education standards. Do you want to go in that direction?
Yes, please.
Because one of the challenges for us is that we don't have clarity on the I'm going to say the product. Now, what I mean by that is that in any other well-rounded or mature profession, there is clarity about what are the skills and the knowledge and the attributes of the professional. A lawyer has these skills, this knowledge, and those attributes. A gastroenterologist has this knowledge, those skills, and those attributes. There is clarity on that. Now, homeopathy is very broad, but I believe that part of our challenge is that we don't have clarity on that.
Yeah.
The attribute part is the professional formation part, the character of the homeopath. The skills are the homeopathic skills, and the knowledge is, where to find information in the books, right? Now, without that clarity, we've got a whole lot of activity. And we've got this school teaching that and that school teaching that and this, and because we're global, it's like football, we are global, truly global. And thank God that the Argentinians play football different to the, the Indians, and the Americans and the Brits. Sorry. I'm so sorry. You were so close at the weekend.
So close.
And my Kiwi heart, which isn't always that,
You're not that amenable to
I'm
the
not that
English.
amenable to the English. I was definitely on your side, folks. Anyway, let's move on. But
I think the homeopaths took aconite after that.
I know it because I
was honestly.
Yeah. So with clarity on knowledge, skills, and attributes, then you can proceed. And if a school teaches this way, that's fantastic. And if this school teaches that way with that basic understanding, that's also fine. And that's kind of what has gone on in education, especially since the revival of homeopathy since the 70s and the 80s with the rise of the different schools. But also you've got to admit the decline of the schools as well. They come and they go.
Yep.
And they come and they go, and they often leave students in the lurch. And that's where educational standards come in, because there's two things here. It's not just homeopathic standards. That can be determined by the homeopaths. Get together, all the grey beards and the silver hair and all of the folks that have been around for a while decide, right, you've got to teach this and for a certain number of hours. But that's not education. Educational standards are, what is the health of this organization?
Yep.
An educational accreditor is interested in, are the students protected? And that means, is there a mission statement? Is the school teaching to that mission statement and everything that flows from that? They're not really interested so much in pulsatilla and lycopodium and when those lectures come along, but they are totally interested in, how are you selecting your faculty?
Yeah.
What experience do they have? Show me a student record. Show me. Right? And that's what the educational accreditor, my God, it's not exciting stuff. But what it does is ensure the student is going to be okay while they're on that journey, learning the skills and the knowledge and the attributes.
And that was part 2 of my conversation with the dynamic Denise Straiges and Alastair Gray. We continue the conversation next week, so do tune in. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far, and of course you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.